first time in over 60 years, we have fragments of a biblical book.
That is recorded from a very, very old text called the Sefer Tamunah, the Book of the Image.
For thousands of years, the tale of Adam and Eve has been ingrained in our collective memory. The forbidden fruit, the serpent's deceit, and their banishment from Eden. But what if there's more to this ancient story? Imagine a hidden chapter, a lost book, lurking in the shadows and revealing a truth far more chilling than we've ever imagined. Scholars have long sought this mythical text. Now, whispers are turning into shouts as archaeologists claim to have discovered it. But what they found is no comforting bedtime story. Join us as we explore a narrative that will make you question everything: the discovery of the lost books of Adam and Eve. These texts were found in the Egyptian tomb of Tutankhamun and published in 1926. Regarded as one of the oldest books, it dates back to Egypt at the dawn of Christianity and is now up for auction. This book delves into the lives of the familiar characters from Genesis after their expulsion from the Garden of Eden. Despite debates over their dates and authenticity, the books of Adam and Eve reveal ancient beliefs that predate known history. The Greek title for this book is The Apocalypse of Moses. It is believed that Paul encountered it in some form, as there are references to it in 2 Corinthians. Initially presented as a revelation to Moses, the Latin version begins with an English translation. While the exact date of its creation remains uncertain, scholars agree it was written in the 1st century CE in a Semitic language, though the story may have been told long before it was ever documented. Primary Latin textual sources date back to the 9th, 10th, and 12th centuries. This work's history is poorly documented, largely because it was considered pseudographic. A collection of such historically inspired yet fictional biblical works is known as the Pagrappa. This book was excluded from the Holy Bible due to its controversial nature. Although some consider it pseudepigraphic, it provides valuable context and insights into historical events. Essentially, this book is an oral history passed down through generations, linking the creation of the first humans to the moment someone decided to write it down. Stay tuned, the story is just getting interesting. The Book of Adam and Eve reportedly details what happened after they were expelled from the Garden of Eden. Also known as the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan, it narrates how Satan told them the fruit was beneficial and that God didn't want them to have it, attempting to sow distrust in God. The book is believed to have been originally composed in Arabic by an unidentified Egyptian author. It eventually made its way south and was translated into Ethiopian. Although the exact date of its composition is uncertain, many scholars believe it was written decades before the birth of Jesus. The book was first published in English in the 19th century. The Book of Adam and Eve consists of 2 parts. Book Y recounts Adam and Eve's exile from Eden and their subsequent temptations by Satan. It reveals that Cain and Abel had twin sisters. Cain killed Abel because he loved his own twin, Lulua, but his parents wanted him to marry Awan, Abel's twin. Book 2 recounts the history of the patriarchs before the flood. It describes how the children of Seth lived on Mount Hermon, the holy mountain, until Jannan and the daughters of Cain persuaded them to come down, causing them to lose God's favor like fallen angels. The book also covers the death of Cain, who was killed by Lamech the blind, and follows the lives of other patriarchs up to the birth of Noah. In Book 1, the punished serpent tries to kill Adam and Eve, but is thwarted by God, who renders the serpent mute and banishes it to India. Satan repeatedly attempts to deceive and kill Adam and Eve. In one instance, he traps them under a boulder, but God saves them and compares this rescue to the future resurrection of Christ. God also foretells several future biblical events, including Noah's flood. Book Y emphasizes Adam's sorrow and helplessness outside the garden. When God expelled Adam, he avoided placing him near the northern border to keep him from the water, which could cleanse their sins and make them forget their wrongdoing. Similarly, God did not place Adam on the southern side, where the fragrant winds from the garden might bring comfort and lead them to forget their sin. The story gets even more intriguing, so stay tuned to discover what happens next. Because God is merciful and wise, He placed Adam on the western border of the garden, where the earth is vast. He commanded Adam to live there in a cave called the Cave of Treasures, located below the garden. When Adam and Eve left the garden, they walked on the ground without realizing what they were stepping on. Upon reaching the gate of the garden, they saw the vast earth before them, covered with stones and sand. Fear overcame them, and they trembled and fell to the ground, almost lifeless, because they had been used to the garden's beautiful trees. They found themselves in a strange land, unfamiliar and never before seen. Seeing their distress, God took pity on them. He sent His word to lift them from their fallen state. Adam and Eve wept as they left their first home, the garden. When Adam looked at his altered flesh, he wept bitterly over their actions. They walked slowly down into the Cave of Treasures. Adam lamented, saying to Eve, "Look at this cave, our prison and place of punishment in this world. How does it compare to the garden? Its narrowness to the garden's vastness? This rock to the beautiful groves? The gloom of this cave to the garden's light? This overhanging rock that shelters us to the Lord's merciful overshadowing? The soil of this cave to the garden land? This earth covered with stones to the garden filled with delicious fruit trees?" Adam was reluctant to enter the cave under the rock, but he obeyed God's command, knowing he would be a transgressor if he didn't. On the morning of the 43rd day, they emerged from the cave, sorrowful and weeping. Their bodies were lean and parched from hunger, thirst, fasting and praying, and from their deep sorrow over their transgression. They climbed the mountain west of the garden, where they stood, prayed, and sought God's forgiveness for their sins. Then something unexpected happened. God saw Adam's weeping and groaning, and His word came to him, saying, "O Adam, when you were in my garden, you knew neither hunger nor thirst, neither weakness nor suffering, neither leanness of flesh nor change, nor did sleep depart from your eyes. But since you transgressed and came into this strange land, all these trials have come upon you." God then commanded the cherub guarding the garden gate with a flaming sword to take some fruit from the fig tree and give it to Adam. The cherub obeyed, and God brought 2 figs on 2 twigs, each with a leaf. The cherub took the figs and threw them to Adam and Eve from a distance, so they would not come too close because their flesh could not withstand the fire. Once, angels trembled before Adam, but now Adam trembled before the angels. Adam approached and took one fig, and Eve took the other. As they held them, they recognized them as from the garden's trees, and they wept bitterly. Meanwhile, Satan and 10 of his followers transformed into maidens for deception. Unlike others, they emerged from the river before Adam and Eve, saying among themselves, "Come, let us look at the faces of Adam and Eve, who are of the humans on earth. How beautiful they are, and how different they look from our faces." The maidens approached Adam and Eve, greeted them, and stood marveling at them. Adam and Eve looked at the maidens and were struck by their beauty, asking, "Is there another world beneath us with such beautiful creatures as these?" The maidens told Adam and Eve that they were abundant creations. When Adam asked how they multiplied, they explained that they had husbands who wed them, and they bore children, who grew up, married, and had children of their own, thus increasing their numbers. The maidens then called out over the river, summoning their husbands and children, who emerged and joined them. Adam and Eve were astonished, watching in silence. The maidens said, "See, our husbands and children are wed as we are, and you too shall have children." This was a scheme by Satan to deceive Adam. Satan thought, God first commanded Adam not to eat from the tree, saying he would die if he did. Adam ate, and though God didn't kill him immediately, He condemned him to death and suffering. If I can deceive him into marrying Eve without God's command, God will kill him. The fire of sin tempted Adam, but he resisted, fearing that following Satan's advice would lead to his death. Adam and Eve then prayed to God while Satan and his followers descended into the river. Adam and Eve returned to the cave of treasures and prayed. That night, Adam stood in prayer, troubled by thoughts of marrying Eve, and continued praying until morning, unsure how to pray amidst his inner turmoil. God acknowledged Adam's thoughts and the prayer he had offered. His word came to Adam saying, "O Adam, if only you had shown this caution when you first left the garden and entered this land." Then God sent the angels who had brought gold, incense, and myrrh to Adam to signify his approval of Adam's marriage to Eve. The angels instructed Adam to give the gold to Eve as a wedding gift and to betroth her, then to present her with incense and myrrh. They told Adam and Eve to become one flesh. Adam listened to the angels, placed the gold in Eve's garment, and betrothed her with his hand. The angels then commanded them to pray for 40 days and 40 nights before coming together, ensuring their union would be pure and undefiled, leading to children who would multiply and replenish the earth. Adam and Eve followed the angels' instructions, fasting and praying for the full 40 days before coming together. It had been 223 days, 7 months, and 13 days from Adam's expulsion from the garden until he wed Eve, thus defeating Satan's plans. But the story doesn't end there. When the time came for Eve to give birth, she suffered greatly. Adam's heart ached for her as she was near death. He prayed to God saying, "O Lord, look upon me with mercy and deliver her from her distress." God heard Adam's prayer and delivered Eve, who gave birth to their firstborn son and a daughter. Adam continued to care for Eve in the cave, and on the 8th day they named their son Cain and their daughter Lulua. Cain means hater because he harbored hatred even in the womb, while Lulua means beautiful because she was more beautiful than her mother. Adam and Eve waited until Cain and his sister were 40 days old, and Adam said to Eve, "Let us make an offering on behalf of the children." Eve agreed, suggesting they make an offering for their firstborn son first and then for their daughter. After the nursing period ended, Eve conceived again. When her time came, she gave birth to another son and daughter, whom they named Abel and Amia. Adam made an offering for Abel at the end of 40 days and another for Amia at the end of 80 days, following the same practice as with Cain and Lulua. As the children grew, Cain became hardened and domineering over his younger brother, while Abel remained meek and obedient to his parents. In Book 2, the sons of God, mentioned in Genesis 6, 2 are identified as the descendants of Seth, while the daughters of men are women descended from Cain. These women, under the influence of Ganon, son of Lamech, successfully entice many Sethites to leave their mountain and join the Canaanites in the valley below. Ganon, credited with inventing musical instruments and weapons of war, leads the Canaanites, who are described as exceedingly wicked, prone to murder and incest. Cain, the first murderer, converses with his brother Abel, and one day in the field, Cain rises against Abel and kills him. The offspring of the Sethites and Canaanites become the Nephilim, the mighty men of Genesis 6, who are later destroyed in the deluge, as depicted in other ancient texts such as Enoch and Jubilees. The upcoming segment in this video is poised to reshape your understanding of the distinctions between the Book of Genesis and the Book of Adam and Eve. The narratives of creation have intrigued humanity for ages, offering insights into our origins and the world we inhabit. Within the Judeo-Christian heritage, 2 prominent accounts shine: the Book of Genesis and the Book of Adam and Eve. While they both share the fundamental notion of a divine creator and humanity's role in creation, they diverge markedly, presenting contrasting viewpoints on God, humanity, and the nature of good and evil. The Book of Genesis, the initial book of the Hebrew Bible in the Christian Old Testament, is conventionally ascribed to Moses. However, contemporary scholarship suggests a more intricate authorship, likely assembled from diverse oral traditions over an extended period. Genesis holds a central position in Judaism and Christianity, regarded as divinely inspired and fundamental to their beliefs. On the other hand, the Book of Adam and Eve does not feature in the Hebrew Bible or Christian canon. It's deemed an extra-canonical text, excluded from the official collection of scriptures. Various versions of the Book of Adam and Eve exist, originating from different sources and with differing content. Some scholars propose a composition around the 1st century AD, while others argue for an earlier date. Despite its non-canonical status, the Book of Adam and Eve has influenced diverse Christian traditions and interpretations of the creation narrative. The most notable disparity between the two narratives lies in their portrayal of creation. Genesis unfolds with two distinct creation stories in its opening chapters. The first, found in Genesis 1, paints a grand and systematic picture. God commands creation into being, separating light from darkness, land from water, and forming the heavens and earth across 6 days. On the 6th day, both male and female humanity are fashioned in the likeness of God, underscoring humanity's special place in the cosmos. The second account, detailed in Genesis 2, provides a more intricate view of humanity's origins. Here, God molds Adam from the dust of the earth and settles him in the lush Garden of Eden, a verdant paradise teeming with flora and fauna. Eve is then sculpted from Adam's rib, creating a companion and partner for him. This narrative highlights a more intimate and hands-on approach to creation, emphasizing humanity's deep connection to the natural world. Conversely, the Book of Adam and Eve delves deeper into Adam's formation, depicting God breathing life into a shapeless clay figure. It also expands on the creation of Eden, presenting it as an already existing paradise brimming with its inherent wonders. Both accounts underscore humanity's distinctiveness. In Genesis, humanity is crafted in God's image, symbolizing a unique capacity for intellect, morality, and communion with the divine. However, gender-specific roles are not explicitly mentioned. In contrast, the Book of Adam and Eve assigns specific roles to men and women. Adam is portrayed as robust and industrious, entrusted with the care of the garden, while Eve is depicted as more passive, yet inquisitive. This emphasis on differing roles has shaped interpretations of gender dynamics and hierarchies within certain Christian traditions. Yet, both narratives incorporate the notion of the fall, humanity's defiance against God. In Genesis, the serpent entices Eve to eat from the forbidden tree of knowledge of good and evil, leading to Adam's participation and their expulsion from Eden. While Genesis doesn't explicitly label the serpent as Satan, the narrative implies dire consequences. Humanity loses innocence and immortality, burdened with mortality, labor, and hardship. The Book of Adam and Eve provides a more detailed account of the fall. Here, the serpent directly engages Eve, appealing to her quest for knowledge and equality with God. Eve's pivotal role in the transgression is underscored, portraying her as the first to yield to temptation. Additionally, it introduces the notions of shame and the necessity for clothing. Ultimately, both narratives caution against disobedience and explore the complexities of human nature. Genesis underscores God's sovereignty, order, and humanity's unique position within creation, despite the tarnishing effects of sin. Conversely, the Book of Adam and Eve delves into the psychological motives behind the transgression, along with the introduction of shame and suffering into the world. This text has been utilized to endorse interpretations highlighting female culpability for sin and the justification for male dominance. The disparities between these narratives have ignited theological discussions for centuries. Some perceive them as complementary, offering distinct viewpoints on the same event, while others deem them contradictory, prompting inquiries about accuracy and interpretation. Regardless, these divergent creation tales wield substantial cultural and religious influence, shaping perceptions of human nature, ethics, and our connection with the divine. We hope you found this video enjoyable. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We eagerly anticipate your presence in our upcoming video.